Okay, first of all, I forgot what I was going to say already. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's video, as the title would suggest, is a reading wrap up for September and October. It's been a hot minute since I filmed a reading wrap up or even a reading related video. I figured the best thing to do would be to combine September and October. It would just be a really short video otherwise. I just didn't see the point in that, so here we are. Let's just jump into the video before I end up giving you some long-winded explanation that nobody came here for. The lighting isn't its best right now, but I wanted to film this video today because if not today, I don't know when I'm going to get a chance to film this video, and as I'm filming this, it's already the 5th, so I don't really want to delay it any longer than necessary. So this is the lighting that you get today. Now on to the actual books. The first book I read in September was Attachments by Rainbow Rowell. Rainbow Rowell wrote one of my favourite books of all time, Landline. Landline and Attachments are the only books by Rainbow Rowell that I've actually finished. I've actually started Fangirl. I started Carry On before I started Fangirl because I didn't realise at the time that Carry On was sort of like an accompaniment to Fangirl. Anyway, okay, so if I were to explain Attachments is, the majority of Attachments is told through emails exchanged between Beth and Jennifer, who work for a newspaper. Lincoln is our main character. He is the IT guy in this company and he doesn't know Beth and Jennifer, and basically, let me try and explain this in a succinct way. His job is to make sure that people, because it's set in 1999 by the way, his job is to make sure that people aren't abusing email at work to send things that aren't work related basically, and that's exactly what Beth and Jennifer are doing, which is why he keeps seeing their emails. Basically, it sounds very dodgy, but it's not. I mean, he starts to fall in love with one of them through their emails. I have explained what Attachments is about before, so if this explanation isn't satisfactory, you can just refer to the other video, or you could just, I don't know, look up the synopsis. I'm gonna start that again because that was not going anywhere. Attachments is about Beth and Jennifer and Lincoln. Lincoln is the IT guy that works at the same newspaper that Beth and Jennifer work at. He has to check the emails that people within the company are sending to each other to make sure that they're not sending things that they shouldn't be sending, basically. It's set in 1999 on the cusp of the millennium and everybody's worried about Y2K, and through these emails that he's reading, he begins to develop feelings for one of them. It sounds very creepy and dodgy, which I can understand why people would look at it that way, but when you actually read the story, it's very cute and it's very sweet and I really liked it. There were some moments that really had me chuckling. I really liked Lincoln as a character. It was great to see him progress from where he was at the beginning of the story to where he ended up at the end. What I love about her books is that they don't really drag for me. They don't take a lot of effort to read whatsoever. I wasn't ever bored when I was reading the book, and I really liked the conversations between Beth and Jennifer. They were actually quite entertaining. As I was reading it, I could just imagine them at their desk sending emails back and forth, and they really felt like three-dimensional characters, like them and Lincoln. They felt real. There's a side character, Doris, that I just loved. The other characters in the book weren't lacking or anything, but I really liked those four in particular. What I want to say next is a little spoilery, so skip ahead if you don't want to hear it. One thing I really liked in the book was that the relationship was a slow burner. Plus, it would have been nice to see a little bit more of their relationship once they finally got together. I liked that they weren't head over heels in love with each other weeks after meeting. I actually really liked that Lincoln fell in love with Beth's personality without having any idea what she looked like, and I know that that's not realistic, I do know, but I just thought it made a really nice story. But that being said, I do understand why people, as I said earlier, I do understand why people would find it creepy, because it wasn't until later on in the story that Beth was even aware that Lincoln was reading her emails. I can't pretend that I don't see why other people would find that, you know, sketch. Even Lincoln himself acknowledges that he's crossed a boundary when he continues to read the emails that end up in the web fence folder, which is where flagged emails go. So I just ran out of recording space, had to delete some stuff real quick, but we're back in business. Okay, so as I was saying, I don't find the story to be creepy because of what happens in between Lincoln reading Beth's emails and them falling in love. Like, you get to know Lincoln and you get to see that he's not just some weirdo that's reading these women's emails. Like, it's not quite like that. Initially, he's just doing his job, you know? That's his job. It's literally his job to read those flagged emails. Eventually, you know, through doing his job, he happens to fall in love with someone. It's the kind of thing that I can really see playing out on like the big screen or in a mini series or something like that. Anyway, Attachments was really great. Overall, I think I gave it like 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. I actually do have the next book that I read here with me, and that was Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. You guys, I didn't like this book at all. I really didn't enjoy this. Okay, let me explain. I'll explain. It's about Aza, who is 16 years old. She has OCD and I think anxiety. I'm not 100% sure on the anxiety, but she definitely has OCD, and apparently the OCD rep is quite good in this. I can't speak to that personally, but anyway, she has OCD, and that features quite heavily in the book. The dad of her childhood friend, who is a billionaire, goes missing. She and her best friend decide that they're gonna help look for him and solve it because there's money attached to it, like $100,000 reward or something. Anyway, that is the premise of the book. As I said, didn't like this book. Not really, not at all, to be honest. I know I'm in the minority with this one. I know I am. I honestly picked this book up because of nostalgia and because of the praise it was getting on BookTube, but I just didn't enjoy it. I haven't read a John Green book in a while. He hasn't written one in a while, and I just sort of got swept up in everything. Like other books I've read recently, I just felt like there wasn't actually any real plot to this. Honestly, it just felt like a series of thoughts with some other things thrown in. The fact that Davis's dad is missing is just sort of clumsily woven into the plot, and I honestly feel like when his disappearance is solved, it's just kind of like, oh. It wasn't that thrilling. It's not written to be a thriller, but it was just kind of like, oh, okay. The relationship between Davis and Aza just felt really forced as well. It felt completely unnatural and just like it was a plot point, but a plot point that didn't really do anything for the story. Aza herself wasn't all that into it either, and it was just kind of like, what is this? As I said earlier, I can't speak to the accuracy of the OCD and anxiety representation, but people who have read this and have experience with OCD and anxiety have said that the representation is accurate, so that's obviously a plus point. It felt like the writing was intended to be really deep, but for me it just missed the mark. There are serious things happening in this novel, but the way the characters spoke just felt really pretentious. They just didn't sound like teenagers when they spoke, and obviously I've not met every teenager to ever exist, but I felt like they just didn't seem like real teenagers. These characters felt just that though. They felt like characters. They didn't seem real at all. It's like they were almost a parody of teenagers. I've seen people say that this is a book that they won't forget anytime soon, but for me, I feel like that's exactly what's going to happen. It just wasn't that impactful for me. I honestly feel like the magic of John Green has waned a little bit for me. I really loved The Fault in Our Stars. That is one of my favourite books ever. I kind of want to reread it, but I also kind of don't, because I don't want to change my opinion of it. But yeah, Turtles All the Way Down just wasn't for me. I think if I'm going to pick up a John Green book in the future, it has to be a book that I'm generally interested in, not just because John Green wrote it. I don't feel like that's enough for me to read a John Green book anymore, you know? Okay, so the next book I read was The Upside of Unrequited by Becky Albertalli. So this book is about our main character Molly, who has a twin sister Cassie, and the book begins when Cassie gets her first girlfriend. Molly has had something like 26, 27 unrequited crushes and has never been in a relationship. Cassie's girlfriend has this friend Will, who is like the perfect first boyfriend. Molly's recently started a job working at a local store, and there's this guy there called, what's his name? Reed, who is like throwing a spanner in the works basically. That's basically the premise, right? Again, I did not like this book, and again, I'm in the minority with this one. This book really baffled me. It has a 4.02 rating or something like that on Goodreads, and that's why I was drawn to it, as well as the hype around it and hype around Becky Albertalli in general. Whenever I've heard people talk about this book on YouTube, it's always been amazingly positive. So with that, I expected to really love this book because it sounded like it was right up my alley, but it wasn't. It wasn't even close. To me, this book was just about okay, and I was so disappointed with that, and clearly that's an unpopular opinion. To me, it read like I was reading someone's diary, probably because it was written in the present tense. I don't mind books that are written in a diary format, like the Georgia Nicholson series by Louise Renison. That's written in a diary format, and I love those books. But with this one, it didn't come across as well. I didn't love Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda, but I liked it way more than this book. It's almost like they were written by two completely different authors. I did think it was kind of cool that this book was set in the same world as Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda. I honestly didn't realise until Simon made an appearance in this book that this book came out after Simon versus. Only twigged when Abby said, "Go speak to your boyfriend" or whatever to Simon, and then I was like, hold on. You know, it was difficult for me to be immersed in the story. I didn't find it all that interesting, to be honest. Molly spends the majority of this book obsessing over wanting a boyfriend and not having one, and it feels like that's all that really happens. I appreciate that the plot is her having 26 or 27 unrequited crushes, but it's like she thinks about nothing else. I get that that's the premise, like I do, but we don't really get to see what she's like outside of that desire. Like, who is she as a person, you know? It's like her whole life revolves around wanting a boyfriend and not having one. She's obsessed with it. I can understand feeling like everybody else is in a relationship and you're just like, yo, what's up, on my ones? But that is all she talks about. That is it for like 350 pages. That is all we get. She's consumed by her singleness, and it's just a bit like, change the record, man. The book is diverse, but like I said in my August reading wrap up when I was talking about When Dimple Met Rishi, a book being diverse isn't enough for it to be considered good. I wasn't particularly interested in any of the characters. I didn't feel any type of way about any of them really, except Cassie. I really didn't like her. She was beyond selfish and totally self-absorbed. And it's funny because Mina was written as this really cool girl, but that didn't translate for me. And Will was described as hipster Will, and again, didn't really see it. There's just not really any substance, and I honestly couldn't tell you much about any of them because I don't remember. They felt flat, you know? It's also mentioned that Molly has anxiety and that she takes medication for it, but that's not really explored in the book, and I know that's not necessarily the focus of it, but the most we get on that front is that she has anxiety, she takes medication for it 2 or 3 times during the story, and that's it. I feel like more could have been done with that. On the back of the book it says that it's a heartwarming and hilarious story. I just disagree with that. It just really wasn't for me. I was happy to be done with it, which is just not the experience I'm looking for from a book. I honestly don't think Becky Albertalli is an author for me. I don't know that I'm likely to check out Leah on the Offbeat, but I might have a look at the book that she did with Adam Silvera, but this book just wasn't it for me. The next book I read was November 9 by Colleen Hoover. This book is about a girl called Fallon who was in an accident, and she meets this guy Ben on the anniversary of her accident, and he's a novelist, and they agree to meet up on November 9 every single year. I wanted to read a book by Colleen Hoover because she's sort of controversial on BookTube. Like, people either seem to love her writing or hate it, and I was curious really. I had never read anything by her. I've seen different book titles of hers, and I came across this book in the library and I figured, let me read it, let me see what it's about. And I honestly wanted to DNF this book about 20 pages in, and I really kind of wish I did. I found it to be very problematic. Ben was creepy and intense and weird. I can see why people really dislike this book. I don't find it to be very romantic or endearing. Ben just comes across terribly. The ending is confusing to me. I don't really see how we got there. It honestly reads like the book version of a Hallmark movie. I found parts of it to be very repetitive. I said several times in the beginning of the book that Fallon and Ben are only 18 and that she's moving to New York. It's just said in multiple different ways, and I feel like that much repetition was unnecessary. I thought Ben's first appearance was creepy and weird and not cute in any way. I honestly just think he's sleazy. At one point in the story he insists that she wears a revealing dress, and I actually have the quote here. Hold on. He says, "There's just enough showing at the neckline to keep me good and happy, but I'm not even positive I'll be able to look away from her face long enough to stare at her cleavage." I feel like that just sort of sums up the kind of character that Ben is. I didn't enjoy this book at all, and I'm not likely to read anything else by Colleen Hoover. I don't hate her writing. I mean, I really didn't enjoy this book, but I wouldn't go as far as to say that I hated it. But I can say with confidence that I'm not going to read anything else by her. My curiosity has been satisfied, and that's that really. The next book I read was actually an ebook, so I don't have it with me, and it was Radio Silence by Alice Oseman. Alice Oseman's name is a name that's been floating around a lot on BookTube. I finally decided that I was going to read one of her books. I'm very happy to say that it did not disappoint. Radio Silence is about a girl called Frances who is the head girl at her school, and she's gearing up to go to Cambridge University to study English literature. It's also about a boy called Alid. As it says in the synopsis, it's not actually a love story between those two characters. There's a YouTube podcast involved. There's a lot of different social media aspects involved in it, like Tumblr fan art and Twitter DMs and things like that. I really enjoyed the book. After November 9 Turtles All the Way Down and The Upside of Unrequited, I really needed a book that I enjoyed. Like, aside from attachments, it had been a while since I read a book and really enjoyed it. Radio Silence really brought it back for me. It's Alice Oseman's second book, I believe, and it was great. It actually came out in May, so it's actually a fairly new release. So as I said, Frances is working towards studying English literature at Cambridge, and she's doing her A-levels right now, and that's basically all she focuses on. All her energy goes into studying, and she's sort of known as this study machine at school. I don't want to say too much about the plot because I feel like the less you know, the more you can get from it. Honestly, I just wish I was slightly younger when I read it. I really enjoyed it now, but I feel like teenage me would have been all over it. Being a teenager is a lot, you know, it's a lot. And this book kind of just addresses that it's a lot to be a teenager. It's intense. It's a very intense period in your life. Like, you have to make these huge decisions that could impact the rest of your life. There's a lot of pressure that's put on teenagers. I feel like the book addresses that in a really real way. Like, it feels relatable. It feels like it's coming from somebody who knows and who understands the teenage experience. Alice Oseman is around my age, actually, and I think she wrote the book when she was still in university. When you're that age, it's a question of, do I go to university? What university do I go to? What do I study? Do I want this? Do you know what I mean? There's just a lot that you have to think about and process. Some people feel like their only option is to go to university and study, so they've got that already in their heads. And right up until the point of A-levels, basically everything has been geared towards going to university. People struggle to see outside of that if they don't necessarily want that. It's stressful and it's difficult because it's like, where do I go from here? Because, you know, everything has sort of been leading up to this point. Francis's entire life goal really has been to go to university and to study, and it's just, I'm not going to go too into it because, like I said, the less you know the better. It's a book that I would recommend to all teenagers, all people between the ages of like 15. I mean, even older people can obviously enjoy the book, but I feel like teenagers should really read this book. There's just a lot that you have to navigate as a teenager, you know, school, friendships, relationships with your family. There's just a lot. As I touched on a little bit, there are a lot of social media references in this book, which I really enjoyed, being part of the social media generation myself. I feel like the characters came across as real teenagers. They didn't feel flat whatsoever, and I could really picture them in my head. They were well-rounded characters. Overall, it was just a really enjoyable book. I liked it a lot, and I'm looking forward to reading anything else that Alice Oseman writes. I think she has the potential to become one of my favourite authors. So the last book that I have to talk about today is Girls in Love by Jacqueline Wilson. On a whim, I just decided that I was going to pick this book up again. Jacqueline Wilson will always have a special place in my heart. She's probably the reason that I fell head over heels in love with reading. She was definitely my favourite author as a child. I went on to have more favourite authors: Meg Cabot, Mallory Blackman, Louise Renison. Jacqueline Wilson started it all for me. Aside from whoever wrote the Biff, Chip and Kipper books, like, I love those as well. Jacqueline Wilson was where it was at for me when I was a kid. This was a throwback read for me. If I saw her name on the cover of a book, I would read it, like, no questions asked. I didn't even really need to know what the plot was about. If Jacqueline Wilson wrote it, then I was going to read it. I first read these books when I was somewhere between year 3 and year 5. How old are you in year 5? 10? So I was somewhere between 8 and 10 when I first read these books, which was probably slightly young. And my older cousins had these books, and I'd be at her house during the school holidays, and my aunt would take us to the library and everything, but I would always revisit these books. It's the first in a series, by the way. There's Girls in Love, Girls Out Late, Girls Under Pressure, and Girls in Tears. I'm not sure that that's the correct order, but those are the 4 books. I never read them in order because when I was younger, I couldn't work out what the correct order was. My voice is going hoarse. I've been filming for like 2 years, but anyway, yeah, I couldn't work out the correct order of the books, so I've never actually read them in order. So I figured, you know, I love those books so much when I was younger. Let me read them again now and actually read them in the correct order for once. Jacqueline Wilson's books are typically aimed towards children, but this series in particular is for older readers. Mind you, it was written in 1997, and I don't think it's actually aged that well in terms of the language, because the way these girls speak, it's not how teenagers speak today. Like, that much is for sure. They are 13 in this book. They've just started year 9. Our main character Ellie has just come back from the summer holidays, and she's found that a lot has changed with one of her friends in particular. I won't go into it too much because it's only 160 pages or so. What I love about Jacqueline Wilson's books is that she touches on difficult subjects, but in a way that's suitable for children. Like, it's not super graphic. This one is a little bit more mature than her other books, as I said, but not too mature. It's mature, but not in a way that's inappropriate for kids. On the back it says that it's for teenage readers, but I think it's more suited for people who are about 11 plus, to be honest. Teenagers today might look at this book and be like, what? They might feel that they're already too mature for it. I think around 11 plus is suitable, really. I was definitely a little bit younger than I should have been when I read these, but I think if you're at least 11, maybe a mature 10, maybe 12, I think you can read this book and get something from it. I realised that I haven't actually said too much about the story. Let me tell you a little bit more about the characters themselves. Ellie sees herself as the least attractive of her friendship group. She describes herself as round all over, she wears glasses, and one of her best friends, Magda, is tall and glamorous and gets a lot of attention from boys. Nadine is described as willowy and gothic. Ellie just feels like out of the 3 of them, she's the one that boys don't go for. Like I said before, she comes back to school and finds that a lot has changed within their little group. Like I said, it was 1997, so there was no texting. So when she came back to school, she was literally like, what's up? What's going on? Jacqueline Wilson's books touch on a lot of difficult subjects, even though the book hasn't necessarily aged super well considering it was written like 20 years ago. The issues that the characters go through in this are issues that near enough everybody experiences at some point. Modern teenagers and preteens should still be able to get something from this book. I'm honestly just really looking forward to rereading this whole series because I loved it as a child and I really enjoyed this reread, and I honestly don't remember what happened in the series, so I'm excited to find that out again. Reading this just reminded me of my love for Jacqueline Wilson. Okay, that is the end of what I'm sure was a very long video. If you made it to the end, good job. Thank you for watching as always. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please remember to give it a like and leave me a comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. There should be a button about here for you to do so, along with some other suggestions that YouTube thinks that you might enjoy, which should be here, here and over here. That's all I really have to say. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye. Since my last reading wrap up, which was, I want to say March, I gave an explanation for this at, wait, have I done a reading video? I think I did. I'm just checking my videos real quick. Wow, memory loss or memory loss. I did an August reading wrap up about I haven't done one since March. Who am I?